Automating the generation of sentient items using the tables from the 5th edition of the Dungeon Master's Guide. Welcome to my channel. I focus on tabletop role-playing games, video games, and science fiction. Sentient items have been around since original Dungeons and Dragons. There was an article, I believe, in the Strategic Review, or maybe it was the Dragon, describing how to make sentient swords and so on. And I remember creating a sword that had some interesting properties. I think I did a video on that. If so, I'll put it in link in the description about Cudslayer. It was a magical sword that had this quirk that it wanted to kill all cud-chewing animals on sight. It was named Cudslayer. In a more recent adventure, I was running a 4th edition adventure. The party found a pack of throwing stars. There were 5 of them. Each of them were magical, each of them were sentient, and they used to argue between themselves. And they all had different personalities. That was an interesting challenge to play, because they would argue with the players and they would argue between themselves and things like that. So sentient items are interesting. So first off, let me show you what this does. If you've opened up PowerShell and you've unrestricted that, you run the unrestricted, which is covered in the README of how to do that. And I've covered that in previous videos about this. So I generate a sentient item. And it says, this sentient item has an intelligence of 14, a wisdom of 12, a charisma of 16. It has an alignment good, The item communicates by transmitting emotions to the creature carrying or wielding it. And the purpose of the item is it's seeking its creator. The item seeks its... Oh, there's a typo. We'll fix that. And it wants to understand how it was created. Creator. Okay, so first off, that's how it works. And if you don't want to get in the technology, I suggest you just go download the sources, because this is going to get moderately technical. So what this does is this is the output, but the communicate purpose. So each purpose is, I did this in XML. So simply because we have a minimum, a maximum, and a title, creator, seeker. The item seeks its creator. Sometimes I use Epsilon as my text editor, which is a clone of Emacs, but it in XML it puts it into this auto wrap mode, which I don't want to do. So each line is an option. So if you want to add more or change more, you can do that. We have alignment. These are using the numbers from the Dungeon Master Guide on page 214 to 218 or 216 that describe the various options for alignment and purpose and communication. So this is how, if you want to change this, or if you find a typo, there's an easy way to fix that. I will have to correct that because I've rebuilt this. And so this is just an XML file. So now let's talk about how this works. This is an interesting piece of code, or at least it was to me to create, because it used some things that I didn't. The first one, I create a function called random ability. You pass it in a name. The idea is you roll 4 d6s and you keep the highest 3. So that's 4d6 k3 is the syntax if you want to get into dice. So first off, I declare an integer array and I set it to empty. Then for 1 to 4, I call getRandom with a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 7. Now, you have to remember, getRandom will not return the maximum value. It will return the value less than maximum. So it includes the minimum, but it does not include the maximum. So that's why you have to do a 1 to 7. So for each die roll, it just adds that into, it uses the plus equal operator and adds that into the array. Now then, we use measure object, which is an interesting feature. So we pipe the rolls into measure object and return the result of that into mobj, or measure object, so we say. Then I format a string and I inject the name into the first piece, and then I take the sum of the die rolls and I subtract the minimum. So that will give me that, and that's what I return as the value. And down at the bottom we see how we call it for intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. That's how we get those there. The second function we define is a little bit more complicated. This one is select random from XML. So this got a little bit more complicated because of the XPath statements. So first thing we do is we take the XML name that we pass in, and we do a get content where we tack on the .xml. Now then, before we can use select XML, which we use down here, we have to add a namespace. And that's sort of unfortunate that when you read it, it doesn't add it automatically, even though there's no namespace. As we see I didn't declare any namespace in any of these because I'm just running it. But we have to declare a namespace here. So we create a new object, which is the namespace manager, and we get the initial namespace from the thing that we read in. And then we add to the namespace a new namespace prefix ns. So this gets the namespace URI. So yeah, that took a while to find those. That's not as cleanly described. So the guts to find the minimum, if we let's split the screen this way. The options for like communication to find the minimum value, we have options, option, and then we have minimum. And it assumes that this is in a sorted order. We could sort it if we had to, but let's not. That gets ugly in XPath, unfortunately. So what this does is we do a select XML, and the XML is the file that we read in. The XPath says use the option and return the first one, which is this one. Then we have to pipe it into expand property node to actually get it into an object type that we can reference. And then we pull out the minimum object. So let's get over to here. That's minimum object. But all of this is then we run the convert int to 32. So that forces this to convert this to an int 32. When I first did this, it took me a while to figure out what was happening when I was doing the maximum, because that got a little strange, and I'll explain to this one in a minute. So the same thing with one returns indexes in XPath that go from 1, and you can get the last one with last. So we can get the last option with last. There isn't a first, by the way, which is sort of strange. You'd think that there was. So this does the same thing. Then we add 1 to it. Well, before I was converting this to int 32, what was happening, like this returns a 100, it would tack on a 1. It would treat it as a string. So so I was getting 1001, which was things weren't working. It took me a while to track that one down. Oh, let's do that one. Oh, okay. I did something to the file, but let's get back here. I'm not sure what I did. Anyway, so then we have our min val and our max val, and we've already added 1 to the max value. That's what we said. So we create a random number between the min val and the max val. Now then, getting the syntax for this was another statement that took me a little while to get working, but that's there. XPath does not have a less than or equal or a greater than or equal, which is what you really want for minimum and maximum. So you have to do not of less than to get the greater than or equal, and not of greater than to get the less than or equal, which, yeah, that's a little odd, but it's just the way XPath works. It's equivalent. So again, we do a select XML, we call XPath, we select the object, and we expand the property node. Now then, this, like communication, doesn't have a title. But if I go over to, if I just look in the directory, what I have here, the purpose, I added a title called description. I mean, an element called title. So the first thing it does is it tries to get this title. If the title will be either null or have a value, and then I pull out the description as that, and I do that. So there's evaluation issues with, I always run into, it's always easier to evaluate things by themselves in PowerShell. So I check to see if there's a title, and if so, then I format this with the format function. So it injects the name into the first parameter, the title into the 0th parameter, and the first parameter and the second parameter. Otherwise, if title is blank, we don't end up putting the 1 minus 2. So we handle that. So then we finally get down to the end of the system. So this does a random ability for int, wisdom, charisma, and we select from random for alignment, communication, and purpose. So we make the assumption that the name of the file and the name of the selection, it's going to print the title here, are the same. Now you can, so that's maybe not the best, but it's quick and easy. And if I just take a look at what's in this directory, so I have alignment, communication, purpose. I have a README file which tells you how to run it, and then we have this script itself. So it's not a long, complicated process. And again, to run this, you just run the script, and it will create the attributes for a sentient item. Now, I enjoyed these. Like I said, I had one where I did that as I had the morning star, or the little stars, throwing stars that you had, and I've also done a sword. Haven't done many of these. These are sort of rare, but I was looking at something interesting to do and program up, and so that was why I did this little PowerShell. Thank you for watching my video. I'd like to hear your comments about what you think of this. If you enjoy these type, give me some more comments or thumbs up. Thank you. I look forward to learning what you think about this video. Let me know in the comments below. I appreciate all your comments. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't like the video, give me a thumbs down. I appreciate both forms of feedback. If you're new here and would like to subscribe, you can click on the icon on the left. If you're interested, there's more content on the right.